Good afternoon, everybody. We're here assembled today for the public access session in the lead up to the ordinary council meeting to occur on the 6th of April. And I have had one request for a public access address from Robin Adams, and I'm here with Robin today, as you can see. And Robin, you've asked to address council on item 13.2, which is listed on the agenda for tomorrow's council meeting, and that relates to the sustainable population strategy. So, Robin, over to you. I'll be flexible again, as we were last time, with time, if you need a bit more than standard allowance, because we don't have other people waiting to make an address. So over to you, Robin.
Thank you, Administrator. If I could seek your indulgence to commence this afternoon with just raising a couple of matters for your consideration, and they're procedural matters. The first one is the council agenda for tomorrow at public access at item 6 in the order of business. Could I suggest that in future there is a note beside public access in the order of business pointing out that public access is scheduled for 3 p.m. on the day before the council meeting, and either identify the section in the Code of Meeting Practice or give the key guidelines that apply. Once again, seated beside public access, because I'm sure you'd agree with me, it's a reasonable presumption by Mr. Average, you wouldn't have a clue that there's been a change made.
Well, can I say to you, I accept that's a good suggestion, and yes, we will do that.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is, it's just automatic for me. I went through the local paper looking for reference to the council meeting, and there is none. Because normally we would have date of the council meeting and a short overview. Just if that could be.
Okay, well, Robin, I'll take notice of that and look into it.
Yes, thank you. And I don't want to be being critical, but also the link to be able to listen to the council meeting still isn't up for the March meetings.
Well, in relation to that,
I went to listen to.
Sure. If I can just respond to that and deal with it now, the recordings of the council meeting were of very poor quality. Okay. So it may relate to that, but we were onto that straight away. In fact, we were onto it before the meeting occurred, and we ordered new equipment, which you can see in front of you today.
Very flash.
Which, very flash, but not very expensive, but will do the job. So we should have much better sound and video recording of the meetings. And we'll start the clock in a minute, because we're not dealing with the substantive item that you've asked for, but I'll just respond to these things as you bring them up. So we now expect that we will have high quality video, which will be audible to anybody who's listening to it. We're not broadcasting live, so people can't watch at 3 o'clock on Tuesday, but the recordings that we take will be posted up overnight, and they'll be available, and we will promote this in the normal places on our website, and in the note that we will add that you've just asked for. The recordings will be available by the next morning, so people can see them well ahead of the start time of the council meeting at 2 o'clock the next day. So
thank you.
We'll start the clock again.
Thank you. Great. All right, now turn to item 13.2, Sustainable Population Strategy. This is a matter you might have guessed is very dear to my heart. In the local media on 12 March, I published an article under my hand titled Development of a Sustainable Population Policy for Norfolk Island is Long Overdue. In the article, I invite attention to Council's Resolution 2018/116, which, in brief, requested the General Manager, in consultation with the Commonwealth, to commence examination of funding options to undertake the scientific work identified in the motion. That scientific evidence would then be used to engage the community in discussion on a long-term population target. And the article that I published on 12 March invites attention to the fact that the need for this scientific evidence was identified in a policy paper developed in 2013 for the Norfolk Island Government when it was planning for growth to sustainable population levels, both in the medium and long term. And in 2013, the Norfolk Island Government recognised that sustainable development involves meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And this involves a balance of community livability, environmental sustainability, and economic prosperity. And whether or not it's appropriate, I leave that up to you, but I have brought along those documents and
Thank you, I'm happy to have a look at those.
And table them for the record. That's my article of 12 March 2022, along with a copy of the Norfolk Island Government policy paper, which is titled Sustainable Growth Strategy for Norfolk Island. It's a bit of a repetition, isn't it? Which may be helpful to the Manager of Planning and Environment. The matter of what is an appropriate population for Norfolk Island has been a matter of discussion for many years and is yet, as we know, unresolved. Council's Community Strategic Plan 2016 to 26, in arriving at its vision, Norfolk Island, the best small island in the world, turned to a quotation from Professor G.J. Butland, a population study of Norfolk Island which was dated 31 March 1974. And it was commissioned at the time by the Commonwealth Government. And here we are, almost 50 years later, still trying to address the issue of a sustainable population strategy for the island. That was a matter dear to my heart back in 1974, at which time I was the Registrar of Lands and was around when Professor Butland was doing his work, and that stayed with me in my mind, so that come the time we were looking for a vision, the General Manager of the day said to me back in 2016, "Well, Madam Mayor, what are we going to put?" And it was immediate, Butland's words. Norfolk Island, the best small island, potentially the best small island in the world. So the Community Strategic Plan 2016 to 26, adopted by Council in September 2016, highlights the need to, firstly, retain open spaces and low-density development, and recognise growth of the population is linked to the long-term environmental sustainability of the Norfolk Island community. So, Administrator, you have before you tomorrow the following recommendation to consider. It is recommended that the General Manager engages with the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications to obtain necessary funding to complete development of the Sustainable Population Strategy, and, subject to the provision of funding, the General Manager engages an appropriately qualified and experienced land use/infrastructure development consultant to assist in developing the strategy for the island. And my understanding was, I have no memory of having had a discussion within this council. I think the General Manager said his name was Jason Natoli. So whether he or not he turns out to be the person that is engaged, time will tell. But the matter is that, 4 years ago in 2018, we asked the General Manager to look for funding with the department, the scientific evidence, and once again we're now asking for funding to get the staff to do that, develop the strategy for the island. So, I stand firmly behind my assertion of 12 March that a sustainable population strategy for Norfolk Island is long overdue. And one must trust, therefore, Administrator, that the recommendation before you tomorrow, if agreed, will bring absolute recognition that growth of the population is linked to the long-term environmental sustainability of the Norfolk Island community, and that open spaces and low-density development must be retained.
Thank you.
I couldn't ask more than that.
Thank you, Robin.
And these are the documents that I
Now, while we're still on topic, can I ask you if there's anything about that recommendation that does not satisfy you?
No, it's really following on from asking for the funding back in the council's resolution, and that funding at the time, the General Manager was requested in consultation with the Commonwealth to commence examination of funding options to undertake the following scientific work as background evidence for discussion of long-term population targets. And I'm quite sure that that's where the CSIRO has come in, you know, etc., etc. So
Well,
to answer your question, no, it's just
it
asking for more
seems
funding to get this
seems to me
moving.
that this resolution, if it proceeds tomorrow, is asking to do what you say was the earlier council called for. So it's not at odds in any way, it's really going down the same path.
Absolutely not. And nor was it intended on my part to be critical of the process.
Not taken that way at all?
Yes, was purely to put on the record the ongoing concern in this community, as I just explained to you about my rates. Why have they gone up so heavily? That means there has to be movement going on with property sales within the community. And as I mentioned in my press article, 12 March, back in 2011, the planning officer of the day made it quite clear in his report that were all the blocks under the current Norfolk Island Plan, 2002, were all the blocks developed in accordance with that plan that was in place legally to do so, and properties were built on them, and I suppose from memory it must have been a suggestion that 2 people per block. There's the potential there, and that potential exists today because there's been no movement with the Norfolk Island Plan, for between 10,400 and 10,900 people to be living on this island, which would be the end of this island. Yes.
Well, I don't want to forecast or preempt what might come out of this strategy. If numbers like that were being discussed in the past, I think this study will start with a clean slate. I would expect that any consultant engaged to carry out the work, a starting point would be to have a look at what work has already been done,
yes, and there's volume.
to examine that, and that may provide a direction, or it may not. But to me, it's effectively starting from scratch and putting the fundamental building blocks in place first, and that is who is going to pay, or how is this going to be paid for. And once we understand that, then who do we engage? And you mentioned the name of a consultant earlier. I don't know whether there's been any discussion with that consultant or not, but I would expect that there'd be discussions with a number of potential parties to carry out this work, and then a selection process would occur after that. There's nothing before me to indicate that we already have somebody lined up or engaged to do this work. No. As far as my understanding goes.
Yeah, I'm sure you would agree with me that of all of the issues that have come before the community over the last 4 or 5 years, this is perhaps one of the most sensitive. And that became clear during the development of the environmental strategy, which was well attended by the community at the various meetings that were convened. And all I can do is ask that there be an absolute awareness of the need for using our community engagement strategy, Council's community engagement strategy, and the Commonwealth one that's also in place. And I see that the Manager for Planning and Environment mentions the department's book, that every effort be made to involve this community to the fullest in community consultation. But I still can't see how it can happen in isolation of the review of the Norfolk Island Plan.
Yeah. Okay. And
that's perhaps, if anything, I could say is missing, but I'm that can be something you deal with separately, because as I said in my media article, I asked that the community that have the advantage of an up-to-date comprehensive, seeing an up-to-date comprehensive report on progress with the scientific assessments, which is still silence around that, which were requested back in 2018, and in particular on progress with the development of a long-term population policy and the review of the Norfolk Island Plan. I can't see how they can't happen altogether. And you end up with a document that is as broad as it possibly can be in its consideration.
well, your point is taken, well made and taken. So this matter now comes to Council tomorrow at 2 p.m. The recording of the public access sessions will be placed on the Council's website overnight, so it will be available for the public to view from early tomorrow morning, well ahead of the start time of the Council meeting, and that will be the process every month. That if we have requests for public access, we will record the sessions and we will place the recordings on the Council's website where the meeting agendas and minutes are kept, and they'll be available by the start of day next day. So thank you for your submission, Robin. I'll certainly take your papers and we'll make sure that they are put into our system and used by the people who will ultimately carry out this work.
I am tempted to pop a letter to the Norfolk Island community in the paper, just reminding them of the ability that is there for them in public access to come and talk to yourself if they have issues of concern.
Well, I'm happy for any support that I can get for people to be encouraged to do that. As you can see, I've set up a new process which we started back in March to try and make these public access sessions a little more relaxed and a little more two-way, where you can actually have a discussion with me. I am interested.
You did make that quite clear.
Yep. But it's a matter of who's seeing that, you know, and how we get that message out. And in fact, I've just come this morning from a session with the executive management about how we can get more community input into what's happening at council. So we are considering those things, but if I can get more interest in the public access sessions, it's very welcome from my perspective.
Yes.
So is there anything else that you want to add?
No.
Well, if not, then we can terminate the session now, and thank everybody for their interest in watching.
Thank you.